It's an age-old question. If you could invite anybody you wanted, living, dead, not even born yet, who would you invite to a dinner party? We've all got our own answers to this. Some people would invite everybody they could, some people practically nobody. But who would I invite? Well, first off, I'd have to invite a couple of literary heroes, some people I admire the writings of, so we could discuss works of literature over dinner. First one I'd invite would be Graham Greene, the writer of The Third Man, Monsignor Quixote, less brilliant books like England Made Me. Our Man in Havana, he wrote that as well. I've not read that one yet. I'd invite Terry Pratchett as well, just for a bit of humour. He'd add wit, repartee to the dinner table. He'd make everybody laugh. I'd invite Michael Palin as well. Michael Palin would have some interesting stories to tell. The only problem there is, would Michael Palin get along with Graham Greene? Would Terry Pratchett get along with Graham Greene, actually? They don't seem like the kind of people who'd get along with someone like Graham Greene. I mean, I could be absolutely wrong here, but Michael Palin and Terry Pratchett could gang up on Graham Greene in a fight over the dinner table. It could end up a sparring match. They could end up all beating each other to a bloody pulp over the Brussels sprouts. Now, these next two I'm a bit unsure of because they're both chefs, and I think inviting a chef to a dinner party, it's a scary prospect because, you know, they're gonna know about food and shit, and they're gonna judge your cooking. Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall, for one thing, I think he'd be the nicer of the two. He'd be the one who was most complimentary. I'd invite him because he does some good stuff with self-sufficiency, with food campaigning, and we could talk about growing our own produce and things like that. It'd be a nice thing to discuss. Although saying that, when I was a kid, I did think the name Hugh was pronounced huge, which, oh, god. I mean, it's easy to understand why, but huge Fearnley-Whittingstall is a euphemism, and you've got to wonder, what the hell were Hugh Laurie's parents thinking of? The other one I'd invite is because every time I see one of his programmes, I think, you know what? I can't help thinking this, but I think, you know what? It would be wonderful if he was my dad. It would be absolutely lovely. I've not even told you who this is yet, have I? Nigel Slater. I would invite Nigel Slater. And, you know, if he was my dad, it would be lovely. He'd be dead kind, he'd be nice, he'd be wonderful. He'd teach you how to cook and things like that. And he'd never shout at you either. He'd just get very, very disappointed in you. And you'd feel guilt because, you know, you disappointed him. Because he's Nigel Slater. You'd feel guilt. And it would be enough to make you behave. Where am I going with this? But trouble is, Nigel and Hugh, they're going to spend the entire dinner criticising the food, aren't they? They're going to spend the entire dinner judging it. Which isn't good. I'd go for former British Prime Minister William Ewart Gladstone. He'd be a nice change to the others. He'd offer some wit, some wisdom. He'd also be very conversational, I think. You know, he was supposedly an incredibly charming man. He used to pick up prostitutes on the street. Not in that way. He used to pick prostitutes up on the street and take them home and give them dinner and things like that. He never slept with them, I don't think, but he was an incredibly charming man. And it would be nice to have that charm at the dinner table. Going back to the literary thing as well, I'd have to invite Samuel Taylor Coleridge, because, you know, greatest poet there's ever been, you've got to invite Samuel Taylor Coleridge. He'd be drugged up though, and he'd probably collapse into the soup. So far, this dinner table's a bit of a cockfest, isn't it? So we need some classy ladies in there, just to balance it out. Ingrid Bergman. We've got to invite Ingrid Bergman. Just for the beauty. And Meryl Streep as well. Meryl Streep, she'd bring a lot of class, wouldn't she? And, as with all the others, she'd be wonderful conversation. She could talk about films. And then Gladstone would probably start flirting with her. Worst part is, she's flirting back. Hayley Atwell as well, just for the beauty thing again. And Katharine Hepburn, just because of that voice, just because of the death rattle, it would add a nice tone to the conversation, an overtone. This wonderful buzz in the air, this unique voice. Definitely invite Katharine Hepburn, although Coleridge falls unconscious into his soup or whatever. I can imagine Katharine Hepburn wanting to play a prank on him. She'd say something like, "Why don't we shave one of his eyebrows off and draw a penis on his forehead?" And she probably would do that. This dinner party is an absolute disaster, isn't it? I mean, Gladstone is flirting with Meryl Streep, she's flirting back. Michael Palin, Terry Pratchett and Graham Greene are having a fight. Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall and Nigel Slater are criticising the food. Katharine Hepburn's playing pranks on Coleridge. That just leaves me, Ingrid Bergman and Hayley Atwell.